Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, before you start, can I just ask you to speak where the microphone is?
Yeah.
On the floor? Thank you.
It's a special time for the day.
No, it's handbook. It's $5 on normal, and it was on sale for $60. So it's a book reader.
So just like sittings.
Yeah, it's just it's different. It doesn't have a phone in it. I'm still waiting for Mark.
You have to go. Sorry. Alex, one more second.
Yeah. Are you saying that analysis though?
Yeah, but like,
Alexander for sure, yeah.
no, so this one.
Okay, discussion. And then what are you saying? You want me to say that too?
No.
Oh,
If you
no,
want.
you want me to say yes?
Or I can take a microphone.
No, it's okay.
Oh, yeah. So, like that.
Yeah.
Here's the order, Mark. The topic is written on the bottom in very bad handwriting.
I got it right here.
Universities should make all academic work they produce include scholarly articles such as handbooks and recorded lectures available to the general public.
I've got it right here too.
So I think we're pretty close to being ready.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, yeah, this one.
If anybody wants to close it. And does somebody have a timing device?
I do. Okay,
Would you, you'll take time?
Yeah.
Thank you. Are we ready? All right.
Oh, nice. Okay, so I would like to invite Dren to address today's proposition, giving a speech of no longer than 6 minutes.
Hello, I'm Dran. I'm the first speaker of the affirmative team, and we are here to debate about the topic: universities should make all their academical work they produce, handbooks, recorded lectures, available to the general public. Our definitions goes to universities. Things that they write, just universities that are under the funding of the state. Our first argument is open materials. States funds the researches by taxpayers. So the people that are taxpayers have the right to have information about that, how the level of lecture universities. To the pay taxers have the right to get access to be the serum for the cure of cancer, they can't have the right to ban it for others that maybe have another information that to get them together and to find that serum. Another argument that we want to state here is that students cooperate. Students cooperate between them in different countries through the available to the general public that universities should do their researches. Through this, the students of different universities has the ability to compare and to get together their works and something that miss from one to find to another one, and in this way to get the greater good and to take a greater good and an invention that is in the favor of all. As we know, if these lectures, handbooks and recorded lectures are available to the internet, then people that are getting them from the internet have the chance to get it even if they are not studying on that university. For example, a man in Kosovo can get access to the lectures that are lecturing on the Harvard University or on the universities where they can reach them because they don't have monies or don't have the ability. Even people on states that are non-democratical or autocratic states that don't allow them to go abroad or to study abroad to get, for example, democratic values and then to get a better education. They through the internet can get this information and grow their education and do this for the all general good and for the greater good of all people. This is a good opportunities of democratic states, of other states that want to share their values with others, to have available to the general public to get access to their values and to their researches that they are already doing. And how the legitimacy comes from is from the taxpayers who are that funds those researches. I mention again, we are not talking for professors' personal researches that are personal copyright, but we are talking for universities that funds from the state to these professors to get a higher level of education, a higher level of lecturing. A great opportunity through this is to get information how to make to get under control the lecturing that is lectures on the universities by normal people whose tax are going to fund these researches. Thank you.
Well,
Would you like to use some
Right.
preparation
No, no,
time
no.
before cross-examination?
I'll use 30 seconds. Thank you. And then you just run yourself there. Ready? Ready.
So I'd like to invite Linda to ask some questions for no longer than 3 minutes. Absolutely. So I'll start the cross-ex time now.
Okay, so firstly I'll start off with some clarification. Now you talked about how on the affirmative you're not talking about the resources that professors, something about copyrights. Could you clarify exactly what you're limiting the debate to?
Yes, we are talking only about the universities that funding from the states gets funds from the states,
Mhm.
and not for the personal professors that make them
Okay,
Yes.
but who produces the work in universities? The
professors
professors.
Of
Okay,
course.
so the professors work for the university and they're funded.
under the name of universities.
Right, but they're funded by the universities and therefore the people who are producing work are essentially the professors, correct?
Yes, and they use the university's labs to produce that work.
Okay, so we are talking about the scholarly work produced by professors, researchers at the institution.
Of course.
Okay. Next, now according to your logic, you're saying that because taxpayers pay the money, they deserve the public university's material, correct?
Yes.
So why should non-tax-paying foreigners in other countries have access to such materials if they're not paying?
They're paying for their university's research. Maybe a man on the North Korea has an information that is missing on the USA, and that's a global.
Right, but then the U.S. citizens, by your logic, aren't paying for it, and therefore they're not entitled to it.
When a man, wherever he is, made an invention,
Mhm.
it would be good even for the United States,
Okay.
even for his states.
So your argument then has changed, so it's not necessarily that we're making it available to public because of money, but rather because of education or these other reasons, correct?
For both of them.
For both of them. Okay, that's fine. Now the next question. Are all books, magazines free even though we want to increase the amount of educational resources available?
Those are for the greater good. Magazines are for waste of time or something
Okay,
like that.
what about educational magazines or books that are nonfiction?
But the universities have the funds by those magazines,
Okay,
but the
but
main researches couldn't
I'm
be.
talking apart from universities, like other books, like not produced by universities, they would increase the amount of educational value. Why aren't they free? And why shouldn't they promote that?
Because they can't have to afford to produce that.
Right, so
That's what,
right,
why
so
need-
they need to
They
so
need
the
money.
fact of the matter is in order to control output and profit in order to produce more material, these universities should have access to to limit the control of information that they produce.
But you shouldn't have to pay 2 times, one for the researches as tax and another one for getting them as magazines.
Okay, right. But then, what is the purpose of putting a price tag on educational material then?
Right?
What is the purpose of putting a price tag?
To get the information and to control the lecturing that is the lecturer there.
Okay, so people want to profit from the material they produce. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Meeting time?
Yeah. How much?
A minute.
Honestly,
left.
Thank you. Do you need my timer? Yes, please.
So Sun Min has the floor to speak on behalf of the negative for up to 6 minutes.
Okay, whenever you're ready. So we don't believe that a communistic application of information is the best in all situations. We therefore think that universities shouldn't be required to make all of their academic work available to the general public. Now we think that in order to win this debate, we need to show you two things. First of all, we need to show you that passing this motion is not justified. Second, that this motion will make the problem even worse. And third, that it won't work. So on the other hand, side affirmative should prove to us either A, why the decrease in university education is acceptable, or the less demand for universities is acceptable, and B, how fewer professors will result in more education, or C, why the forceful revelation of information is okay. So we're going to be operating under the case line that controlled quality is better than unrestricted quantity. Now before going on to actually my constructive case, I would like to rebut the case of side affirmative. Now first of all, we have a problem with their definitions. They say this debate is not about what universities produce, but it's only about what professors produce. Well, we're not saying which universities don't have information that's produced by professors, right? So we're going to say that that kind of analysis doesn't work. Now the first argument they talk to you is about taxpayers, how the benefits of research is actually going to make everybody more knowledgeable about the current situation. They talk about the greater good and how, for example, we don't have the right to ban the available information for the cure of cancer. Well, we're saying that this kind of information is, first of all, not being banned. This kind of information is not being banned or is restricted by universities. We're talking about information that can't be published. We're talking about certain information that's going to benefit only a small portion of the population. So we think that that falls. And secondly, they talk about student cooperation, how this is for the goodwill. So they talk about how democratic values can be accessible in non-democratic countries, and how this will result in more better education. Well, we're saying practically this is not possible. First of all, many people don't have the foundations to understand university material that talks about these democratic values. Second, they talk about how non-democratic countries, democratic values will supposedly can't be accessed, and this is going to be increased by the university education being available that talks about democratic values. Well, we're saying that if democratic values are not talked about the country, are probably going to be censored by the country, then how can university education that talks about democratic values be accessible or be accessible to the population when there's government policies restricting it? So let's go on to our case. Our first argument is that the quality of education, there will be a less demand for universities. So in the current system, higher education is controlled by post-secondary institutions. When the general public has access to this higher education, it decreases the perceived value of a diploma or a degree, as the information can be readily attained without significant cost or effort. This devalues the purpose of going to university. When the purpose of going to university is devalued, there will be less demand for universities. This less demand results in less funding for researchers and professors. This leads to a degraded quality of education, which we don't like. Our second argument is that there will be a restriction in the pool of professors. Now, the profession of a professor will be diminished on two levels. So, first of all, if universities don't have the motivation to maintain their institutions, if they don't have the necessary funding, then they can cut costs by hiring worse professors to increase their profit margin. Second, professors will be pressured to cater to the expectations of the individual population, including the people and the government officials. So, they're essentially elevated celebrity status. And then, many will therefore want to stay away from encroaching upon controversial topics that are not generally discussed by their countries. Not only will professors self-censor, but some may be influenced by politicians to actively support policies and ideologies that they don't necessarily want to support. We think this is problematic. And this is in contradiction with the university's goal of becoming facilitators of liberal information, liberal ideologies, and discussion. So our third argument is that this removes the intellectual property rights of a university. So forcing universities to make their intellectual property available to the public is an infringement of intellectual property that is not acceptable anywhere else. Knowledge belongs to the individual or group that has discovered it. So this undermines the money and the effort of the professors in schools who do the research. This motion unfairly forces the professors to reveal their information and take away their intellectual property. For example, inventors we see in the current system don't have to tell their plans to everyone else. And there are patents to encourage this discrepancy, this secrecy of information for intellectual property rights to be respected and for these inventors to actually profit from their intellectual property rights. We think on a principle level, this is really unjustified, that there are intellectual property rights being violated. Secondly, we don't think that professors shouldn't be required to make a profit. We think that universities need to make profit in order to better fund their professors, better fund their researchers, to increase the quality of education. This is being undermined by the case of side affirmative. So we're going to say that not only is this going to harm the quality of education, but this is going to harm society in general in some ways. For example, in stealing intellectual property rights, many countries will be forced to face a problem. There's a problem of biological weapon research in universities, and we don't want this information generally available to the general public because this is dangerous and it can be used for terrorists, for example, but in general, we want to restrict this information for the national security of a country. There are many countries where they restrict this kind of dangerous information only available for professors because we think that this is going to increase the danger that can be posed to the public. So we think this is really problematic. So because we have shown you that this motion is unjustified, because it unfairly removes the intellectual property rights of individuals, and because we have shown you that the motion will make more individuals actually not have the right to intellectual property, make the problem worse because it harms academic output by removing competition and removing the pool of professors, we are very proud to oppose. Thank you.
So I will, would the negative like to, the affirmative like to take some preparation time before cross-examination?
Can you show us every minute?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Used 1 minute.
Yeah.
Speaking on behalf of the affirmative, Andrew? Oh, it's cross-examination. I'm jumping ahead, sorry. I'm always used to prep time ending and then, okay, very good. So cross-examination, sorry.
Okay, congratulations for your speech.
Thank you.
First of all, could you tell me if we're talking about foundation of them universities, universities that get foundation from our taxes?
Universities
That get foundation from
funding
our
from our taxes.
funding from our taxes.
We think that this resolution pertains to both public and private universities.
Both public and private universities.
Yes, because we think that, some universities, if they reveal their information to the general public, while some universities don't, and this creates an uneven playing field where some universities have more advantage and more competition, while the other universities, for the students and both for the professors, the university itself, it's not the other way around, so this makes an uneven playing field.
Yeah. What's the professor's duty? Is his duty to make lectures, to lecture to his students?
Yes,
Right?
to make lectures to students.
So why shouldn't another student from another university see them lectures if he needs, for example?
Well, for example, we see that by passing your motion, by under your model, we're saying that this is not going to be only available to students, but to the general public, right? We see that in some conservative communities, people, governments, and corporations can access this information as well. This is really problematic.
Okay, I'm working in some bank or something and I need something from biology maybe to make a project. So why shouldn't I get access into these lectures and get some more information that I'm paying with my taxes from my money to these
in the current
universities?
system, we see that a lot of public universities already publish most of their information online, right? So we don't necessarily need to further that by forcing it on public universities who probably have a reason why they're not revealing certain information, plus private universities who also need to make a profit and who also want their professors to have intellectual property rights.
Private universities are private universities. We're talking about universities that get funding by our taxes.
Well, we think that we contest that definition because this creates an uneven playing field.
Okay, were we talking about professors, about their lectures, or professors comparing to the university, there's a staff that gives them the right to publish these lectures? So we were talking about the university in general, not only about them professors.
Okay.
Because in this case, maybe the professor should get his students to his house and maybe lecture
Okay,
them.
so when I say, so in the current system, if you're only talking about public universities who are already funded, who are funded by the people, then we say that most of the information is already funded or is already made available to the general public, right? And then we say that some public universities funded by governments who don't make some information available online have certain information, such as I talked about, biological weapons that are used by governments that are only government top secret information. This kind of stuff shouldn't be available to the general public.
But they are students, right? So you're talking to students about all
No, we're talking with the general public. The general public isn't only restricted to students.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so now we're ready for another step. But you guys would like to take some preparation time?
Yes.
Six minutes left.
Judges ready? Points. Greeting everyone, I'm Andrew, the second speaker of Affirmative Side, and we are here to strongly support the motion that universities should make all their academical work as handbooks and registered lectures available for the general public. Now I think that we really clearly are saying to you why this work should be available for the general public. And I'm here to strongly support and to tell why this resolution must pass today. So, the first thing that we was talking about was that these materials must be available for the general public. It's because the students cooperate to each other, and it's really important to see what other students are working and what are they working on. And the second of all, it's mostly important because state universities are funded by taxpayers. So these taxpayers have the right to see what's going on onto these universities. And overall, if these academical work become available for the general public, we'll kind of check on our professors what they're working on, and is these lectures going on right, and everything else. So they are, as an affirmative side, it's our duty to tell you why they should do and not how they should do. So the main important reason why they should do is because we need to have a look on it, what's going on in our public universities. We need to know the quality in our public universities. We're not talking about private universities. They're private institutions who they have a kind of director, owner, and they can do development, what kind of politics they want to. We are talking about public institutions where they get their funds from the taxpayers. So it's important that these professors kind of give a recipe, if I can call it, for their work and become available for all. I wanna stop into another point. We clearly define that we are talking only for the work that it's done by professors. Into the university. So we are not talking about private work of professors that they do back into their home or into their own labs. We are talking just for the work that they do incorporate with their students, and this is what it should be available for public because it's really handy for everybody, and it's handy for the other university student, as we tell. So, for example, let's take an example. If somebody into a public university in the United States is researching on something, and they do it public for public for general, they publish it on the internet, for example, for general public, and another university into another country, public university in Spain, for example, get access into that. Students of this university get access into that and see the work that it has been done by this university, and they actually, for example, have the halfway done, and they see where they have go, and they get and they start working on that invention, and probably it's really handy because they'll invent something maybe useful for the whole humankind. So this is a really good thing and a really helpful thing to do. Let me repeat what I was trying to say. So we're trying to say to you why they should do it and not how they should do it. We're trying to say to you to who it will be helpful, and it's probably to everyone, because the government the government and the taxpayers will see what's going on onto their public universities. And the third one, how the students corporate will be beneficial to everybody, and it will be much easier for everyone. Thank you.
Some time before cross-examination?
Actually, we'll keep it running.
There's 6 left.
Ready?
A minute, please.
You've got 5.5 left. So you have a 3-minute cross-examination period. Starting. Start the timer.
Right. Thank you for your speech. I have a couple of questions. So you talked about why we should pass this motion. So can you tell me how you're going to pass this motion as well?
Well, I think we clearly defined the beneficial if this motion passes.
The benefits. So can you tell me
Yes.
pragmatically or just in practical terms, how are you going to pass it? So you're going to make every single information that's produced by professors available to the general public, right?
the information, the work that they do during on universities,
Mhm.
and it's clearly defined. I think lectures, handbooks, recorded
All
lectures.
right. So you think always, in all situations, all information should be available, right?
That one that professors
Professors do.
do during the.
So if you tell you, so if we can show you one situation where professors shouldn't be allowed to publish the work that they did in universities to the general public, do we win the round?
No, you want one. I think you're trying to say about that biological
Or-
bombs, or what was it?
Okay.
Those are things that states do in secret, I think.
Well,
Classified.
Classified, but they
Yes.
do it in universities, and they are funded
Not
by the
necessarily.
government, right? As
Yes,
you defined in the
they're
law.
funded by the government, but not necessarily in universities.
But university professors are also involved in this.
Yes, but I mean they can bring them to another lab. I don't know what
Okay,
secret
alright, okay.
stuff.
So say a Chinese professor, or say a professor lives in a really conservative community like China, and especially a really conservative community. So this professor is talking about the good stuff about pro-Western liberal democracies. Do you think if this information or if this lecture would be made available online or to the general public, that the public or the government would react?
Well, I think that we defined in the beginning. We're talking how they will be mutual benefits.
Well, mutual benefits, but then, in non-democratic countries, this could also happen as well.
Yes, but I don't think that in non-democratic countries professors give like that kind of pro-democratic rule.
Well, this is because
Yes,
information in university is restricted within that university, right?
No, excuse me, I didn't get your
The
question.
lectures and information within the university is restricted only to the people in that university. That's why,
Well,
right?
yes, but we want to change that.
You want to change that. So you want professors to be to make all their opinions widely known, both to the government and to the general public, right? Or not only to the government, but also to corporations and stuff, right?
Yes, of course.
Yes. Okay.
That's what we're debating.
30 seconds.
Okay. So say a Chinese professor actually makes this publication available, and so
But it's
the
his
government
choice.
says, well, because he's funded by the government, right?
Yes,
So-
but it's his choice. If he knows that everything will be public, I don't think he will start talking pro-democracy.
And do you think not talking about pro-democratic countries, or just talking about this discussion in general, is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, we need to publish that work in universities.
We need to publish it working with this. Okay, thank you.
Affirmative is next.
We'll
We
take
have some
the,
preparation time available.
so we have 3 minutes,
So you're starting with
5:30.
5:40,
Oh, okay.
5:49.
Okay, thank you. gentlemen, professors produce education. And we think that depriving these professors of the intellectual property of what they produce is going to disincentivize them to produce further education. And because, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that controlled quality of education is more important than unrestricted quantity of information, we strongly negate the motion that universities should make all academic work they produce, including scholarly articles, course handbooks, recorded lecture, available to the public. And today, as a second negative speaker, I'm first of all going to deconstruct the affirmative case in order to prove our burdens and then reconstruct our own. Now, first of all, side affirmative comes up to you and says, you know what, the only universities we're talking about are public universities that are taxpayer funded, and then which leads to their first contention about taxpayers. They say the taxpayers are funding the government and the universities, and thus the universities owe it to the taxpayers to provide information. And we have a few problems with this. First of all, we say that these public universities actually don't get all of their funding from the taxpayers. University of Sydney in 2009 reported that they actually get less than 25% of all their funding from the taxpayers, so we don't necessarily think that the universities completely owe all their materials and information to the public. Second of all, we say that public universities already release a lot of information, and there are reasons, ladies and gentlemen, exactly why they're restricting some forms of information. As my partner has talked about in our third contention, we think that there are very dangerous materials being released by universities that are going to be very dangerous to the public and the international community once it is released to the entire public. Now, they say that, you know what, this is like government classified information, right? We don't really talk about like biotechnological weapons in universities, but we would like to disagree. According to The Economist in 2013, quote, the University of Wisconsin in Rotterdam separately found ways to make a strain of bird flu called H5N1 more contagious. Critics fretted that Paris might use this knowledge to cook up a biological weapon. We think that universities do have courses and do conduct research in which they produce information that's going to be very dangerous to society in general, ladies and gentlemen, because we think that the wrong people could take advantage of this information, and we cannot justify this. Furthermore, they talk about how it's important to increase global dialect, how student cooperation is going to increase through the motion, and we also have a few problems with this. First of all, we say that the most important information is already released, that there is already global dialects going on in the status quo. We think the side affirmative completely ignores what's going on in the status quo and the nature of the education being produced in the status quo. We think that online courses like Coursera and edX already produce a lot of information that increase global dialect. Furthermore, ladies and gentlemen, universities such as MIT, universities like Yale already produce materials that's available to the entire world, and thus we don't necessarily think that there's a problem with global dialect that exists in the status quo. Second of all, we say that uncontrolled flow of information is actually going to decrease the quality of education, so the information that's going to be actually accessible by the entire world is going to be decreasing in quality. Just because, ladies and gentlemen, we want to increase the global dialects insignificantly, we don't think that this justifies a decrease of quality of education for the people who are actually paying for the tuitions of these universities. So let's move back to the affirmative and to the negative case and explain why our contentions still stand. Now, first of all, we give you this idea about how the quality of education is going to decrease, right? We say that the demand of the university is going to completely decrease because we're going to devalue the value of a college degree. We think that people go to university to get education, and when this education is completely free of charge, there's no incentive for them to pay the tuition and go to university. And we think that the primary reason and the funding that these universities get to conduct their research is from these university students' tuitions, and we think that this lack of funding is going to lead to a lack of quality of education and the devalue of university degrees. Second of all, we talk about how it's going to decrease the pool of professors. All they say to this is that the only information released is conducted by the university with the university funding. But ladies and gentlemen, we say that all the information being researched by the university professors are being funded by the government. Thus, we think that everything that these professors do or research is going to be available to the public. It's not necessarily going to be restricted to a small part of something. We think that professors work on incentive and financial incentives, ladies and gentlemen, and we think that completely taking away this revenue for professors to gain profit by selling their publications is going to decrease, and this is going to disincentivize for future generations to pursue this new level academic pursuit and by becoming professors. Last of all, we talk about this idea about the intellectual property and how we think that it's important that we control what we invent, right? We talk about this idea about how inventors should have the right to protect what they think is rightfully theirs. We think that if we were to completely ignore the right to intellectually own something that you've rightfully produced, then this is going to lead to bad impacts, like the precedents being set that you don't necessarily have the ownership to something you produce, and we think that this is going to lead to negative consequences. So because, ladies and gentlemen, we strongly believe that controlled quality of education is more important than the unrestricted quantity of information, we beg to oppose.
Would you all like some preparation on the further process?
1 minute, please.
You have 5 minutes left.
Hello.
Hi. Congratulations for your speech.
Thank you.
Why we are live streaming this debate?
Pardon?
Why we are live streaming this debate?
Because we think this debate is great.
Does it promote the youth forum?
Yes, for sure.
As the researches will promote the university to others?
Well, not like the research on how to make biological weapons, no.
Okay, where's the point if we pay for that university and don't get the benefits from it?
Pardon?
Where's the point if we pay for that university and don't get the benefits from it?
We don't think there's points in paying for universities when you don't get any benefits from it, right? That's why we're saying that if all this information is free, no one's going to want to pay for this universities, which in turn,
Okay.
the universities won't be able to fund the professors who produce
Thank you.
information.
Can you make the practice from home, at home?
Practice from home?
Home. Yes.
Practice what?
Practice researches, lectures.
Yes, for sure, yes.
You can make the practice at home.
That's why people aren't going to go to universities
2 minutes.
Oh.
and devalue the value of a college
And you
degree.
can hear the lectures from the home, but you can't get a degree from home.
No, you can't.
Professors has obligation to work under the surveillance of university, right?
Yes.
And when a manufacturer produce a product, for example, car tires, whose product is it? It's manufacturer's products or
Well,
workers' products?
If the person who made the tires are the inventors of the product, then we think that the intellectual property on how to make a tire belongs to the inventor. However, if the worker is using that inventor's knowledge to make the tire, we think it belongs to the manufacturer. But we think that the producers are the inventors in this case, right? We say that they're the ones who produce this information in the first place, thus they have the intellectual ownership to this
If
information.
we pay taxes for that university, why we have to pay twice to get that information?
Sir, you completely misunderstand our analysis that we give in your application, right? We're saying that taxpayers only account for less than 25% of what the university is being funded for, is like even public universities.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The affirmative has 4:46 left. 2.5 minutes left.
Hello everyone, I am the third speaker of the affirmative side, and we're here to talk about the topic universities should make all their academical work they produce, like handbooks, recorded lectures, available to the general public. Also, I want to emphasize that in this debate as an affirmative side, we were talking about public universities and about taxes that people, general public pays, like people, citizens pay taxes for funding these universities. So we were telling through our arguments the right that people have, that actually citizens have, to access on these informations that actually not even professors make, like inventions or something, but even those students comparing with each other. Also, we as affirmative part, we said, like side, we were talking about benefits for society and benefits for university also, that gives us or to achieve the criteria for the general benefits. Like benefits for society are to get information for all of those lectures that are actually recording, and since they are recorded, we know that professors cannot make some bad things or cannot make bad lectures, so they are recorded and they cannot make, like bad meany things or rude things or anything else. So they know they are being recorded, and they try to give their best to the students, to their students. Also, it is another benefit for the university because they get promoted. We had an example actually for, in this case, live streaming. We're here live streaming, and the aim is to promote the debate and to promote the Idea Youth Forum. So in this case, comparing to the information in universities, we promote them universities. And what does this where does this promotion get us? This takes us immediately and basically to the competition that universities may have. Competition that a university, when they promote lectures, good lectures, and the other university is going to think to make lectures better and better, and the competitions brings us the leaders and brings us the best of all what they are doing and all of what they are lecturing. So also, as the negative side told us that we can study at home, but studying at home doesn't mean that we can make practice at home, practice of what they're lecturing, and that doesn't mean that we can get a degree. So when we apply for a job, we don't have the degree. So we're talking about the case that if I am doing a project or something and I want to have some information from some lectures of a university, a public university, where in which case I pay taxes, so from my money that university is funded, and I cannot get access to that information or to that handbooks or to that recorded lectures only because we don't want to share them. So this is the part when we lose, in fact, and we don't have any profit here. So the profit would be only if we get access to that information, in which case there will be a total cooperations, even though if someone it's their choice. I mean, for the general public who wants to see that. Who wants to see that information or not, but we should give that information. We should give the right to them to have that information, because it's their right. I'm emphasizing again, it's our taxes that we pay to fund these universities. It's our money, so when we invest in something, we want to have our benefits and our profits that are for both sides, even for society, like getting infos and paying professors and knowing what they do in class and how they lecture, and even though in the university, promoting university and making the competition better and getting professional leaders only about competition, who's the best at all. Thank you very much.
Negative has 3 minutes remaining. Minute and a half left. Five seconds. Minutes left. Negative to speak and conclude our debate this evening. Let's start.
Opponents ready? Judges ready? Okay. Now the first main voting issue I'm going to talk about is the nature of the status quo. What are things now, and what's going to change if what our opponent stated implemented is going to happen. So firstly, in the status quo, we already provided to you that there are a lot of resources out there. Public universities already publish a lot of the lectures. Also, there's also resources such as Coursera that actually publish entire university lectures online. So a lot of this information is already out there for the public. And now we see that the problems of an absolutist policy, such as making all scholarly work, every single page, every single hour of university works published, created by professors, that is what's going to be problematic. Now that goes on to our second main voting issue about the threat to public safety. Now this is something that's been dropped around and it's very important because because the fact is, if you're going to affirm a resolution that says all scholarly work produced by universities should be made available to the general public, you're going to have to defend every single instance. And the fact is, because they dropped this example, we provided to you how there's a growing concern about research in regards to biotechnology, open publication that could provide information of use to terrorists. Now, this is something that's been acknowledged across the globe. The United States actually, again, with the example we provided from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and the Erasmus Medical Center, where they were about to publish a strain of a research they did on bird flu that could be more contagious, a type of biological warfare that could be used by terrorists. This actually raised international awareness and the fact that we have to use discretion when we're publishing scholarly material. And again, in this example, it was work produced by universities, paid for by taxpayers' money, and worked with by graduate students of the university. So therefore, this clearly applies under the context that they established. It's clearly an argument that they don't address. And again, you have to uphold discretion. Again, not all scholarly work should be available to the general public. That's dangerous. You have to have a level of restraint. You have to have a little bit of consideration. You cannot uphold this absolutist policy. Which leads on to the third contention about our third main voting issue about education. Now again, our opponents emphasize, they say that recorded lectures keeps people accountable, it keeps professors accountable. But firstly, we see that the students in the lectures already do keep them accountable. They can report them if the professor is doing something illegitimate. Second, recording all lectures, again, this is something that they didn't address in our first contention when we talked about that it's going to reduce professors' ability to talk about controversial issues as a result of the widespread media access and public access. Secondly, they didn't address the fact that about the decrease in demand for universities once all the work is published. And the reason why this is so important is because if the demand for university decreases, that means the profit decreases. Because the reason why they're so valuable is because there's a demand for them. But the fact is, at the point at which universities stop making this immense amount of profit, what happens is there's a decrease in research, there's a decrease in the education that professors can produce, because there's limited hours that can be spent for these professors. So as a result, we see a decrease in education, a decrease in the quality of education as a result of making all of the scholarly work produced by these universities public, and that is extremely problematic because, again, that's a detriment to the quality and quantity of education in today's round. Next, they also talked about how competition is good, but again, competition already exists in the status, so it's more than enough. And secondly, again, what makes it competitive is by, again, making sure that certain information is something that's held at discretion. And finally, the fourth main voting issue is going to be intellectual property, and this is also something that has been failed to be addressed by our opponents. Again, in terms of intellectual property, now our opponents say the taxpayers paid for this education, but again, they don't address the piece of evidence we provided where we say that taxpayers oftentimes only pay a portion that universities have in their revenue. They only account for, again, a 25%, and this is something that was left uncontested. So why should taxpayers demand 100% of all university work when they only pay for a quarter of it? Clearly, that is a violation of intellectual property. And again, on the negative, we're not saying that universities should close off everything that they do. We're saying that no, in the status quo, there's already a lot available, but the fact is it's problematic once you allow every single piece of scholarly work to be available. Not only is it a detriment to public safety, which is something that they neglected to answer in the rounds. Again, the importance of discretion for public safety when it comes to certain types of research performed in these tax-paying universities. And again, secondly, in regards to the demand of universities and the importance of that. And so again, extend our first contention in regards to the quality of education decreasing, the demand for universities and thereby research, the expansion of knowledge decreasing. Extend our second contention about the decreased pool of professors, how again, public relations, they'll be self-centered, thereby decreasing the quality of education. And also extend our third contention about intellectual property. Again, these professors, these people, these academics, they spend hundreds of hours, they spend millions of dollars on these work, and it's not for us to demand from them. It's for them to provide to us, which they are doing. And secondly, again, in order to allow them to continue what they're doing, what we have to do is we cannot have an absolutist policy where we require all universities to publish every single work that they produce. And for all of these reasons, because we believe that the quality of education ought to come before quantity, we strongly oppose.
There's no formal comments after this debate.
No comments or decision.
Because they can right away. So I would say,
Have a good day.
yeah.